Hello everybody, welcome back to Sunday Berries. Today we're going to do another abstract watercolor tutorial and I am super excited because we're going to go a little bit further down the rabbit hole of abstraction. So let's see what's going to happen. I haven't practiced it, although I know the idea because I have used plastic wrap before. So we're going to see how this is going to pan out. So stick around and find out. The materials. You will be needing your washi tape or your tape of preference to tape off the corners of your paper or sketchbook. You will need watercolor paper or your sketchbook. I will be using several different watercolor papers just to see what the difference is going to be between one paper and another. We are going to be using both the 100% cotton paper. I will be using Arches, and I will be using Canson Montfalk watercolor paper, which is cellulose. I will also be using another 100% cotton paper. I will also be linking everything in the description below. And I will also be using the Canson XL paper to see what the difference would be between the Canson Montfalk and the Canson XL. But we will be using the Arches watercolor paper just to see how it performs in this type of exercise. You will need your watercolors. You can choose any type of watercolor that you want. I have my Daniel Smith, my A Gallo. I do have this graphitine paint set that I haven't even opened, but we're going to see how I can include it. I do have my Coliro set. These are metallics, and I promise I will be using metallics on this one. I have more Daniel Smith over here. And you will need your paper towel, fine liners, and your brushes. I will be using possibly just the size number 8 and a size number 3 for details. If you want to use a larger brush, you can do that. And maybe I will try that too. If I do, I will probably be using a size 12. You can use a flat brush if you want, because this particular exercise it's going to work fine with a flat brush, but you will still be needing a detail brush. So the smallest one that you have, you can use. I will use the number 3 because I don't want it too small. And of course, you will need plastic wrap or cling wrap for this experiment or painting experiment, however you want to call it. We are going to be experimenting today. It's going to be a tutorial, but also it will be more of a tutorial that will show you how to experiment with your materials and with materials that don't really fit in the normal art material world. Although this is already like a standard in material. And I think that with that said, we're ready to go. Let's start. I will be starting with the Canson Montfalk because I am really curious as to see how this paper is going to perform. And the sooner I start with this one, the sooner it's going to be dry. The color scheme that I'm planning to use is going to be between yellows, greens, and browns and blues. You can, of course, use any selection of colors that you want to use that could be analogous colors. Like, for example, this blue, violet, violet, and red violet. You could use a blue, a green, a blue, green, and a green, yellow, green, yellow, and yellow, orange, or this other combination. If you have a color wheel with you, then this would be really helpful for you to decide on which watercolors you want to be using. Always keep a color wheel nearby because you never know when you're going to need it. And it's particularly helpful because if you need a quick reference about what's the complementary color of each one of these, you will know exactly what to use to mute down any other color that you have. So that's always really helpful. Without much further ado, we're going to start. And I'm going to be really quick on this section simply because we've done it before. And again, I'm going to link the description of the video above so you can check out this first part. So I have a very dirty palette today, but I don't mind because I don't mind. The colors are pretty much similar, so I don't mind that they are going to be basically in the same area. Maybe they will change a little bit, but that's okay. We're going to use a lot of water for this, so be prepared for that. Now that I'm here, I want to prepare the next color and have it ready. So again, it's not going to be the pure color because I'm mixing it with whatever I have in the palette at the moment. So that's going to be rather cool. All right, so we have pre-wetted the paper, and what I'm going to do is just add a little bit more water because I really want to have this paper flowing for the colors. And just apply. And what we're going to do, as you will know from the other video, is to leave enough white space in between these rows that we're going to be creating. But we want them to touch one another. So this color right here is under sea green, so there will be some separation there, which I find really interesting. And here I have Naples yellow. And we're going to drop water to create some rather interesting effects or blooms. I am using now Prussian blue, and this is probably the scheme of colors that I will be using from here on end. So it can get a little bit mixed up with other colors in my palette, but that's quite all right. Now, what I do want is these colors to be really deep. I don't want them to be really soft or anything like that. I want them to be as deep as possible. And always making sure that these colors actually do touch among themselves. I'm going to add quinacridone gold to this mix because I think this one on the bottom is rather too light, so we're going to be using a little bit of this. And again, this is very done without really thinking too much about it. You really want these colors to flow and move and just be. And again, a lot of water. So now with your plastic wrap or saran wrap or cling wrap, you're gonna just let it fall. And we are going to set this aside to dry. You can, of course, move this around to the way you really want if you want to create something different than what the actual wrap is doing. It's fine. We're going to allow it to dry and we're going to see what happens. And we're moving on to the next one. I'm going to use a rather smaller brush on this one. This is the Arches paper, and we're going to start with the quinacridone gold. And I'm not pre-wetting the paper this time, but I am going to be using a lot of water for this one, okay? So we do want those colors to be vivid and really as concentrated as possible. I'm still using that green, undersea green here. And again, I want to add as much as possible and allow these colors to mingle. As I'm going, I'm adding water to it in order for everything to be flowing the way we want. I'm going to add a little bit more of that Prussian blue here. It's already mixed up with that undersea green, which is perfect for me because I really don't mind having those two meet up. But I'm going to add a very intense Prussian blue here. Prussian blue is a really interesting color to work with. I hear, and as I understand it, it might fade away, but it reactivates when you put it down in a dark drawer. It will come back to life again. So that's pretty interesting to me. And I love the Prussian blue. And for this one, I will be adding Van Dyke Brown. Again, don't pay too much attention to how you're laying down the color because it's really not important at the end of the day. You can do it really, really pretty, but sometimes art is not about pretty. Sometimes art is about this experimentation and just taking some risks. And why not? Let's do that. And try doing the water from really high above so it can create maybe some sort of action movement. And that's going to be interesting because as you can see here, it did create some really interesting movement. And we have another one ready to go. You can crumple up the paper like this and then open it up and then throw it down or place it down, however way you want to do it. And we are going to set this one aside to dry. All right, so this is the Derwent Graphitint. As you can see, I haven't opened this one. Let's see how we can open this. These are pearlescent colors or mica colors, really just metallic colors. So that's going to be rather interesting to use. I am going to go ahead and pre-wet. This paper is Canson XL paper. And honestly, I have no idea about this. I just got it because I thought, ooh, I guess they are graphite based. I will be adding information. This color is Ocean Blue. and it's graphite paint. So we'll see what happens with that. And I'm going to go with rust, which looks like, oh yeah, it does look like rust. I thought it was going to be a blue, but as you can see, it isn't. And we'll see, we'll see, we'll see, we'll see, we'll see. Just adding a little bit of water to that to make sure it is really going wet here. Adding water here as well. And maybe we're going to go with this is a steel blue, so we'll see what's ooh, we'll see how that goes. So remember, we are just doing, let's say, more of an organic feel here, and adding those metallic colors at the same time, and see what happens. Again, we are not doing anything that requires too much thinking or too much concentration at this point. What we really want is get this paper saturated with the colors that we're using. This one here is dark indigo, and also add a lot of water. And now we're going to add some gold to this as well. So perhaps there, perhaps here, and maybe we can add a little bit more of that color that is insanely beautiful. Mix it up. I really don't know what's going to happen here, so just go with the flow, create a mess, allow yourself to experiment today. We're not reaching for a masterpiece, we are creating art. Do make sure to have enough color in this process, because otherwise it's going to be rather light, because we're not coming back to this, you understand? It's like we are going to cover this in the end, and there is no coming back to it. All right, so I need to clean up a little bit of all this water here, because it's going to run when I add the saran wrap. So make sure that your edges and your corners are clear of extra water. Here we go. So I did this one in an angle. Hopefully it will work. Let me see if I can cover that little corner up. There we go. And as you can see, we get extra water there. We'll see what this is. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen, so we'll see. So I was going to do another one in another type of paper, but I decided against it. As of now, I want to know exactly what's going to happen with this. This is the first one we started. And as you can see, really interesting things are starting to happen. So we're going to allow it to dry. I always like to allow this to dry naturally. You can wait for it all to dry and then start, or you can wait I would say at least half an hour to an hour, and then remove the plastic wrap or cling wrap or saran wrap, whatever you're using. I think we're going to have a lot of fun. My mind is already playing with ideas, but we'll see. We'll have to take what's going to happen from here and then work with that. So we'll see what's going to happen with this. But in the meantime, just allow it to dry naturally and wait at least an hour before removing the plastic wrap. It could take longer depending on where you are, how cold, how hot the temperature is, and if there's a lot of humidity. All right, so I've waited about an hour and I don't think it's fully dried, but we're going to take a look at the first one that we did. It's looking good. And with this plastic, instead of throwing it out, you can clean it up and save it for another one. So as you can see, we have really exciting marks left on the paper, really exciting ways that this plastic pushed and revealed certain areas of this painting. So from the place that we started, this has turned into something completely different. And this is revealing a different type of abstraction that perhaps it's rather interesting and exciting to look at. And from here, the options are limitless. So we are going to place this one aside. And just to tell you the truth, it is almost fully dried. I'm loving this area right here. Really interesting. So we're going to keep this one aside for a moment and we'll see the next one. Okay, this one is the last one that we did. It is the Canson paper. It does look a little bit wet still, but we're going to risk it and take a look. Actually, was it? Yes, this is the last one, I think. And it's perfectly... Oh my God. This is the one that we did with the mica and the graphitint. And I love what happened here in different areas. It's just incredible as it is. And this one is almost dry as well. It's actually pretty dry, I would say. And you can start looking at this from different angles because, as you know, non-objective abstraction is this. I can see, well, maybe it's the mica that is glowing because this one has metallic colors. So, but this one is, oops, this one is absolutely interesting and really makes your mind start working right away. Now, this one is the Arches watercolor paper. This one is 100% cotton, so it would be different from the cellulose paper. I'm not sure how dry this is going to be because of the nature of the paper, but we're going to take a look. We've given it a lot of time. See, it's a little bit wet in some areas. There's a lot more moisture than with the other one. But again, take a look at this magnificent effects that we've been able to get with this. Oh my God. Let me see, this is wet still. See, we still have wet areas. So this will probably need a lot more drying time. For example, here is still drying. So the difference here between the cellulose paper and the 100% cotton paper is basically the drying time that you're going to be faced with. 100% cotton paper will absorb most of the water and the pigment, but when you add the plastic, it doesn't have the same air to dry all areas at the same time. So some areas are going to be wetter than others. This area right here, I still see it glistening. And there are some areas that are pretty dry, but I wouldn't touch this one until later on, much later on. But you're left with something really interesting. Loving this area right here, loving all of this area right here that for some reason completely separated. And yeah, this area right here is still wet. There are some wet areas everywhere. So yeah, we still need to allow this one to dry. So we're not going to work with this one right away. So basically, this is the exciting part that we're going to be working with. And yeah, it's exciting. I am trying to take a moment to take it all in and see how we can work with this marks that the paper has left on the paper. Me personally, I love it as it is, but we're going to continue working on this because you can push this even further. You can make the most out of it and reach for the stars. This is just a beginning. So really take your time studying what you have in front of you. Take your time thinking about what you're going to be doing next. Don't go and immediately start making other marks right away without really understanding what's in front of you and seeing what you can do with it. This is where values come into play. For a piece to really work, you have to have a variety of tonal values that go from the darks all the way to the lights. We have extreme lights in some areas, and we have a ton of midtones. The darkest values that we're seeing are probably around the lines. So we have a few options. We could darken some areas that you want to highlight. Yeah, I think, yeah, we need darks for this piece to really pop because we have plenty of midtones already here. There are some areas here that I wouldn't touch. If I was going to do darker areas, would probably be where those darks are. However, here, I wouldn't do that either. So we're going to see about these two areas here and see what happens. So we're just going to experiment for a moment. So wish me luck. If you cannot get to certain areas with the brush that you have, you're going to need your smaller brush. So that's why you don't see me reaching for areas that this brush is not going to be of any help. What I need now is a detail brush that it's going to help me reach the areas that I want to reach. And even this blue, I feel is not dark enough to where I want to take it. So we're going to start with this blue and we'll take it from there, okay? Actually, I might bring a little bit of Jane's Gray. We'll go back to this one later, but this is a better color altogether for what we're looking for, because we want this area to be a lot darker. And you want to respect some of those little areas that have come in and created some ridges. Because that's where the magic is, really. So I'm allowing this one to dry, but we're going to go with this Jane's Gray. So here I am using that green again. And that is undersea green. And drop a little water there. Allow it to dry. Maybe here too. This area right here, it's actually rather beautiful how the colors merged into one another, the blue and the yellow. This was Naples yellow, I believe, or quinacridone gold, and created this green in between this. So I would like to preserve that. I'm going to softly come here and not have that so defined there. And there's going to be a bloom created here, but I'm good with that. Jane's Gray is such a beautiful gray tone. I like it a lot because it does granulate and it's quite beautiful. We're going to do the same here. This one wasn't fully dried yet, but since we don't mind getting those blooms, if you need to use a larger brush for this area, you can. I don't mind to work a little bit faster to try to keep it flowing. So what I want to do is wet this part right here and then come with a second layer on top of that layer. I want to come back here and darken this area again. This area right here is absolutely perfect as it is. I am afraid to even touch it. Let's connect these two. So we could definitely go over these lines and create something that pops. That could work. But I don't really want to do that. I think I want to concentrate my darks here at the bottom. So I think I will follow these lines and float them. This one here looks like an interesting one, or this one, but what we're going to do is take it slow, and we are going to allow this to dry and see how that looks in a few minutes from now, and give us time to really think what we're going to do here. This one is another one that honestly I feel it's perfect. I wouldn't even do anything to this. I am very tempted to pull off the tape and run with it. But the same thing is happening. We have a lot of midtones and some dark areas, so we could do a lot with it if we add a little bit of dark tones at the very least. And I think that this area right here could benefit from it. Very light wash, but at the same time we are adding color to the area, just intensifying some areas. What we did here was mica, so we can intensify some areas. Do take this time to meditate and think about you, your art, the piece. Where do you want to take it? So we're playing with a lot of water here, which may or may not be good, but we're going to see. Again, we are experimenting. There is a rather wonderful shape there that I really want to keep. As you start working with your piece, you're going to see that your imagination gets triggered and you start seeing shapes and you start seeing a whole thing, and you can go with that as well. I'm seeing tons of things here that are quite interesting, and I just don't want to mess up at this point. So this is going to require a lot of patience from you and a lot of thinking time. So we're going to set this one aside to dry. And I'm just looking at it. Just exploring the possibilities, I guess. But yeah, I don't want to overdo this at this time, so we're going to wait on this one as well. So while the other ones are drying, I decided to start a new one because I decided to achieve or try to achieve the darkest of darks from the start. So we'll see how this one goes. So I'm going to do this one a lot freer than I have shown you to do. Adding a little bit of gold. And now we're going to cover, reusing one of our papers. And we are going to set this aside to dry. Okay, in terms of this one, let's go ahead and take a look, because maybe if we take the tape that we have, we're going to be able to better judge the painting. So let's see. All right, now I have a better look. The yellow is a little bit too much. Okay, so all right, so for me, I see so many things here that I don't know where to start, really, because it's actually rather interesting. So one thing that I'm going through right at this very moment is called attachment. You are attached to your result, and it might very well be a really good result, or you are just stopping out of fear. And this is something that I go through very, very often. I don't want to mess it up. I don't want to continue on in fear that I'm going to mess it up. And at the same time, I am faced with the fact that if I don't continue on, I will never reach the painting's full potential. And honestly, since this is something that we can recreate, not to the same extent, it gives you both the opportunity to continue on or decide to stop. Like right now, I'm not even sure if I should have done this, but it needed it. So I need to recreate something like that on this side to start balancing out the painting, because otherwise it's just pushed down unless I turn it this way, and still it would need something on this side because everything is over here at the bottom. So perhaps we could follow the natural lines that the plastic wrap actually left, and at the same time I'm afraid to do that. So here's the conjecture what to do. On the other hand, if you want to go more objective in terms of, okay, I see a fish, or I see an underground scene, or I see a scenery, then you can shape this into what you're seeing. So, for example, I see fingers down here, but that's all I see from this point. If I look at it from a an aerial point of view, I can see like the head of a fish, for example. Could be a shark, could be two fishes instead of one. And this is what I'm seeing. Maybe you don't see it. So, yeah, it's these are very, very tough decisions that you need to really take into account before even continuing on. So, for the sake of the tutorial, for the sake of the tutorial, we're going to take some risks. Okay, so I really don't want to, but I really need to bring some darkness somewhere here. So yeah, I'm going to have to get it here. Let's go for it. So now that I don't have the tape, it's going to be a careful move because you don't want to get out of the perimeter. So that's why we usually don't remove that tape until we are very, very sure that we're done. But at the same time, there are moments in which you just have to, you decide at the very last moment you're going to do X, Y, or Z, and you're going to be needing to work around things and get it done. So basically, that's where we find ourselves today. So do find some quiet moments for yourself if you're going to do this way. Of course, it's up to you if you want to do it any other way, like making your own marks, making flower shapes. This is just a background. But I am trying to basically keep this very, very abstract and do something that has nothing to do with anything that you can recognize. Here I have a little bit of a backflow, so we're going to fix that. And at the same time, we can take that opportunity to deepen this area or darken it. Remember, this one is cellulose paper, so you are very prone to blooms and harsh lines. And when you use it, you're going to be accepting the nature of the paper. So now already, just looking at it, already is taking a shape, and that's important. So I'm going to go around this shape here. And I'm thinking that's where I need to go. Although, not sure. But I will be using very, very dark, or light, I mean, quinacridone gold. So it's going to be a yellowish tone. And basically, this is almost a glaze. So whatever was blue underneath might seem to the eye as green. We can also glaze here at the bottom portion. But as I water this over here, it has gathered some color. So with that alone, I think it would be sufficient. But you can, of course, add that quinacridone gold there, and it's not going to harm it whatsoever. This section right here is bothering me a little bit, so I am going to just allow it to come in. This is going to translate right here into a mid-tone. So even though it looks darker, it's not going to translate as a dark. So now that I've done this, I want to create some higher visual contrast here. And here, of course, and I think I'm going to continue with the quinacridone gold. Quinacridone gold is such a perfect color for glazing. We use it a lot with acrylics, although this color has already been discontinued, which is a shame. So if you don't have it, that's fine. You can use any other yellow or golden tone, like for example Nicolezo yellow would work fine. I am going to intensify this area right here. This is the Van Dyke brown. And I'm trying to be really mindful of my wet areas at this time. I think we're going to add a darker wash here. And I'm using Jane's Gray for this one. So as you can see, the piece starts to acquire a different look, a different flavor to it, that it's pretty raw and really interesting altogether. It's almost as if you're putting together a puzzle. We're going to create another wash, so let's just go for it. or a glaze, really, it's what I mean. So what you want to do a glaze is add water and a very thin coat of transparent color. And I am using here the quinacridone gold, but mostly water, really. Because quinacridone gold is such an excellent glazing color, it's going to look green because it's going over green, so it's giving it a deeper tone to it. And I think I will just add water here with a little bit of that queen gold. Here with water, I'm just moving the paint because it's lifting the paint for some reason. Guess it's not fully dry. So I'll probably just do one for the sake of the video, so it's not too long. I don't know yet. Or do just this one and then speed up through the others. And that way you don't have to wait for me to think about the things that I want to do. So I think that this blue right here has to come up here somewhere. So perhaps we need to add that somewhere. That is Prussian blue, but I'm going to add a little bit of Jane's Gray to that because it's rather, well, it's a bright one, not a dark one. So I'm going to do a very light wash of the blue here to intensify this area just a tiny bit. We have been carving things out of here. So, yeah. I think at this point we need to stop. All right, so I'm really liking this. I want to fix a couple of things that we have going. Okay, so we have this one pretty much cleaned. I need to fix a little bit of this because it's not fully, it's not a good straight line. So so that area right there, we'll see what we're going to do about it. This one right here. Obviously, cellulose paper, it's going to be a tougher paper to work with because you get uneven things, but we're going to allow it to dry and we'll take it from there. Basically, what we have been doing is negative painting. So with this one, which is the one with the Coliro and the Derwent Graphitint, we're going to try a little bit of negative painting and then we're going to decorate this one. Although it depends, because if the negative painting comes out really interesting, I don't think I want to do much to it. I'm still trying to make sense of it, and I can see certain shapes that remind me of different things. So this might be I'm not sure. Take your time with the painting and really look at it and really find sense into it for you, because with abstraction you're trying to give an emotion, whether it's a peaceful emotion, a tense emotion, a happy emotion. Look at the colors that you have going and see where those colors are leading you as well. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go for it. We could use this and add some different vibe to it instead of using the graphitint at this point. So again, this is very much like negative painting. Remember that this particular paper is also cellulose, so you're going to be dealing with a lot of blooms, and we are quite happy with those, so don't worry about it. For this type of work, if you were wanting a work that is clean from blooms, then this is probably not the paper for you or for the job. So this one here that I'm adding is Jane's Gray again, but I will be coming back to the graphitints for some areas. I'm going to add a little bit of water because the blooms are going to happen regardless of what I want to do. So I am noticing that with the graphitint, when I'm going over some areas, it's lifting the one underneath. I'm not sure if it's the paper or if it's just the graphitint itself. And here we're going to go with a simple wash. And allowing those to meet as well. So this is another glaze. And this is going to be another glaze. And here as well. All right, so I think I'm going to leave this one as is, and we're going to move on to the next one. We're going to allow this to dry before we do, and we'll see what comes out of this. This is the arches one, and this one, I think I'm going to treat it, instead of bringing out too much, I think I'm going to leave it as is. If I do anything, it's going to be with the markers. There are things here that I really do like that I don't want to mess up with. But if we don't try, we don't know. If we mess up, we mess up. We could continue with some dots here. Very, very spread out. So it's minimal intervention. Here we could do a few of them more close together. So what we're doing really is enhancing what we already have instead of doing a negative painting where we're carving out what we want to see on the top. So to fix this up a little bit, we're going to just clean this area out. With white, you can use any type of white that you have just to sharpen it a little. I'm doing lines white on white, so it does have a little bit of texture to it. And we'll do the same here. Here I am not so worried about that, or here I actually like it. All right, so it's time to take off the tape and reveal this. This one seems to me very aboriginal. There we go. And oh my God, I love it. I'll probably use it this way, but remains to be seen. And we're left with this very interesting composition. And to be perfectly honest, this is another one that I like too much, just as is. You can always do your decorations and everything, but personally, I think this one is done for me. It all depends on what you like, the type of abstract that you like, and I think we've covered a few options when you get into this type of composition. Oh no, we'll get that off there. I really do like this one just as is, so I'm not doing anything else to it. I think it has enough interest to live just as it is. So we're leaving this one as is. We have one that is quite the challenge because I see absolutely nothing there. Um, Let me see if I can separate this from the block. Oh, and I promised to tell you which paper this is, and this is the Fluid 100, which is 100% cotton paper. So this teaches us something. If you want really dark color to work for you from the first go, then use a lot of pigment in the composition. Just remember to leave enough space in white. Why? Because you're going to achieve your darkest darks, but you're also going to achieve your midtones, and then you're going to have your light areas as well. It can work any which way you place it, but for me, I think this is the best option. And of course, I would suggest to also think about how you want the composition to look. I wouldn't want this line in the center, so this is not a perfect composition in the end, but something to think about in the future. You want your horizon line to be above, below, but not right there, pop in the center. So even if we turn it this way, we have somewhat of a center figure, so we don't want that either. So for me, it works best this way. Yeah, and if you do not like this area that do not connect, you can also just add a line there. For me, it's actually open because it feels as if the picture continues somewhere else. So it's just like expansive. It moves, it wants to move. You can also decorate it whichever way you want. It lends itself to be decorated as well. All right, so to the final challenge. This one is the biggest challenge for me because I think it has to do with the colors and also with the type of colors that I was using, which is the graphite tint. And I had never used them before, so I'm not sure. But we're going to just go nuts and decorate, and we'll see what comes out of it. I want something non-objective. So what we're going to do is just go ahead and start decorating and see what happens. So because I'm not afraid at this point to mess it up, it frees us to do whatever we want and feel fine about it, because there is nothing that is going to stop us from doing something exciting and something different that you had not envisioned before. So, even if you do pieces that are more challenging than others, it's just an opportunity um, to really see where your creativity can take you without any fear. Because from the get go, basically, let's I'm talking about me. I really do not feel attached to this piece because I don't like it. However, when I finish, I could like it. So that's completely something that I would love to see happen. And if I ruin it, I just ruined it, you know? And maybe I just did. But we are going to go on because, part of everything is just experimentation and finding out how far you can take something. And I think in these few examples that we've done today, we have covered different challenges along the way and we've seen different things. And I think that gave us a very unique opportunity, and you will probably face the same things that I've just faced. And it's a matter of seeing where to go with what you've got. not always is good to discard a painting simply because it's not working out. Because in the end, you could do something that will make it better, even if it's not by painting and it's just by adding some dots and lines or some type of design on top of it. So just do keep that in mind and play around. Just play around. One of the challenges that I face with painting abstraction is that I normally would want to go to a different place where everything is more non objective, sort of like this, but without the decorations. But with watercolors, I'm having the situation that it's very, very difficult to achieve simply because you can't do so many layers. And I think we're done with this one. So let's take off the tape and we'll see whether or not something good came out of it or not. So this paper was the Canson XL paper. And the fact, oops, and the fact that I didn't like the results on this one so much with the colors has nothing to do with the paper. nothing to do. It was more about the graphite and the colors together. I don't think it was a good mesh for me, but that's just me, of course. So we're doing final touches to really call it done. Because when you start when you start doing this doodle thing, it's like very addictive, very hard to stop. So yeah, and I think I did too much of it, but it looks really great. I don't even know how I like it most, but I think since the bulk of the dark colors are on the bottom, I think the weight of the picture is this way. Yeah, this way would be the best one to look at it. All right, so we're back and we are going to talk about each of these pieces and what we've learned from each of them. This today was a tutorial, but also an experiment, so keep that in mind. This first one was what we started with, and I really enjoyed the process because we were using a negative painting approach. Almost, it doesn't have many layers to it. A negative painting goes even deeper than what we've done here. But it was a negative painting approach. So basically, we were carving out what we wanted to see and what we wanted to highlight. It really came out to be a very interesting piece for me, and that's why I did not want to continue adding on to it, because just as it is moves me, and perhaps another artist would do a lot more things with this one, but for me this one is complete. I really love the texture and the forms that we were able to achieve. And even though I have never used it with watercolor before, I have used it in my normal acrylic paintings just to get some textures going, usually in the beginning of a painting. So this is a journey that we're taking together. For some of you that might be starting out with watercolors as well, this is part of the journey. This is part of the experimentation with watercolors, particularly if you lean into the abstract world. This type of work will really ignite your imagination. So this for me was really eye-opening, and I am happy with the fact that I stopped with it and set it aside. Sometimes we need to take a moment of separation between you and the painting to allow it to just sit and move on to something else. The reason why my videos tend to be this long, and I am sorry about that. I know the attention span can be really shortened when it's a long video. It's because I like to work with different pieces at the same time. So if one doesn't work out, I can move on to the next one or allow it a little bit of space from me and the others and continue working with the ones that are calling my attention. In the beginning, the first one, because I haven't done this particular work before, it took me a minute. It took me a minute to really start seeing, to really understand what was going on, what was telling me. From there, you start making your decisions, and you're going to be confronted with this throughout your work. It really doesn't matter if you work with abstraction, with landscapes, with florals. It really doesn't matter, because the composition or what you're doing, the painting that you're working with, it's going to be asking for something, and you need to decipher where you want to take it. because sometimes you have something else in mind and the painting has an idea of its own. So you need to adjust and find your way to end up with a result that moves you, that means something to you. Because if it does, especially in abstraction, which is non objective, you really don't have anything that you can say, oh, that's a flower, oh, that's a fish, or like I'm saying, I'm trying to explain this shape. It's just a shape that is moving through the paper, and the lines are keeping you interested in that center, and even in some cases, helping you see it. But if the painting says something to you and it is what you wanted to translate or express through it, then the painting is doing its job. As long as you're being true to yourself, true to your art, true to your expression, then the rest is just, the icing on top. And the reason why I'm telling you this is that in the process of creating your work, you do have to love what you're doing, number one. And number two, you have to be at ease with it. Don't stress yourself trying to make a masterpiece from the get go. Sometimes things like that do take time, but you, at the very least, know when you need to stop and when the painting is telling you to stop. And whatever the result is there, to know that there is meaning behind it, that there is something that is telling you and it's moving you as an artist to say, this is a good painting. So that's exactly how I feel about this one. In the beginning, it took me a minute because I knew this one had potential. I really loved the colors. The color combination really, really was dictating the way I should handle this because I loved it. And the marks left by the plastic were really alluring to me. So when I did this, that was so sharply dark, it was a shock for me. I thought I had ruined it. And I probably did. Maybe this is too dark. But when you're working with any type of medium and you're painting, you do need to balance things out in a way that you have at least a good contrast and a good amount of dark values and light values and midtones for in order for the whole piece to work. I feel that while this is probably not perfect, I'm in love with it and I feel that it's finished as it is and it works for me. I think it has a little bit of everything. So let's move on to the next one. Oh, by the way, before we move on to the next one, just a reminder that this is the Canson Monteval watercolor paper. It is a cellulose paper. All right, the second one that we worked on, this is the Arches watercolor paper. And we basically used the same colors that we did on the first one. And I loved it as it was. But I thought that we could do a little bit of embellishment because I know a lot of people do enjoy that. And I am not unhappy with the result. I actually love this painting with the embellishments. I was very careful not to overdo it because I did not want to cover this beautiful texture that came out from the wrapping. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that these were granulating colors. I feel that the best way to view this one is this way, probably because of the dark at the bottom and because this section right here carries all the weight. This one, we did not do negative painting because we did not add any more paint than what it had. And by using the plastic wrap, you get this deeper areas and lighter areas that form because of the wrinkles in the paper, create a texture that is quite unique and quite interesting and beautiful. But this texture right here, I was never expecting. This is called pressed paper, and for me, in my opinion, I think because it's a little bit rough, I think it did create this. Plus, in addition, we were working with colors that tend to granulate. Altogether, this one is quite perfect as it is. I am glad in a way that I did the additional embellishments because it does give it a feel of an Aboriginal marking piece. I can connect with that because I come from an island. We had Indians, they were called Tainos, and they would do symbols like this. Symbols like this and symbols like that. So it does feel very home to me. So I really am glad that we did a little bit of embellishment here. Do notice that I didn't overdo it. The lines are basically following the lines that the plastic left behind, and everything else is very minimal. So this one I absolutely love. The third one that we did was with the Graphitint and Coliro. Now, I think this one was the one that gave me the most problems because I didn't really like the combination between the Graphitint and the Coliro in at the same time. And it's not really a bad result. I think it's actually quite interesting. When you move it around, you can see the glittering of the mica in the Coliro set. Maybe I went overboard with the decorations, and that's quite all right. By adding all these things, we actually achieved something that was much better than what we had in the beginning. So for me, it's quite interesting, and I think that I might have overdone it with the markings, but still there are some things that I can take away from this. Okay, let's say you dislike this picture. Then what did you do in that picture that you can take away from this to a new one? For example, I love this flower over here. I did like the bubbles, and here the spaced out circles that are really interesting to me. So those things for me are very valuable because I can see myself doing them in a different scenario. Overall, I do not dislike the Graphitint. I do not dislike the Coliro colors. It's just that I couldn't find myself within this particular result. I think that overall it's not my favorite, but it was good for our experiment, so that's fine. We always, there's always one that is not as good as the others, so that's quite all right. But if you liked it, let me know in the comments below. And finally, we did this one, and I decided not to touch it, just like the first one. I really loved it as it was. This one, I was telling you that perhaps in order not to get too many light colors or desaturated colors, we needed to add a lot of pigment right from the get-go. And this was that experiment. And I think it gives us a completely different view of this same experiment. And let me just go back to the first one, because as you can see, we needed to go and carve out the dark ones on here, and we needed to work a lot with it in order to get big contrast and looking for those very strong darks. And yet with this one, we get very striking whites, which we did leave, and also we get some really good darks. So the contrast is there, and then we have beautiful midtones in between. So this one, it's another one of my favorites. A takeaway from this one is to really think your composition. If you're going to work with a horizon line, push it down, because this one feels right in the center. It's a little bit over the center, but it still feels like in the center. And no matter how I turn this piece, there is a centerpiece right there. So in a composition, you want the horizon line to be below the middle of the page or way above the middle of the page in order to be interesting. I still find this one interesting because there is some sort of a connection between the areas, but still it could have been better achieved if I was really paying attention to the composition. However, for me, for my taste, I really do like it, but it's not a perfect composition. Do know that. And do know that I am aware of that. Again, if you get something, a result similar to this one, you can definitely go ahead and do markings, embellish it, do whatever makes you happy and what speaks to you in terms of the painting. My decisions are my decisions, your decisions are yours. And the only way to know whether or not your decision was the correct one is by trying them out. If you remember at the beginning, when I first was looking at the first painting that I did, which is this one, I was telling you about taking your time, looking at the painting, seeing what you can carve out, or where your next move is going to be. Maybe I didn't say it this clearly while I was doing it, but it was what I was trying to say. In the beginning, when you're confronted with a complete abstraction, your mind is just working really fast to try to find a shape, to try to find something that you can understand within the painting. But instead of doing that, although that's going to be rather natural to happen, instead of trying to find the tree or the flower or the leaf or anything like that, try to find which areas you would like to deepen or bring forward. So, for example, for me, I wanted to darken some areas and make sure there was something that was coming up, and I wanted to highlight this part of the painting. So, regardless of what you're seeing, if you see a flower, of course, bring it out. So, darken the areas around it. You will be working with negative painting at that point because you already have everything on top. You just want to create that depth in the painting and bring out or highlight something that is there and only you can see, and just darken all the other colors to bring out whatever you're seeing. And that's the only way to work with this type of painting and this type of approach, because the painting is already done. The painting is there. All you need to do is create contrast so that the lighter areas that you want to enhance are easier to see. So that's, I guess, oh my God, I've spoken so much. Okay, so I guess that's the whole process behind negative painting, trying to bring out into the light or bring up into the light the focal point of your painting. So, yeah. All right. So I know I have talked too much, and this video is probably going to be really long. If I want to give you information that you can actually take away with you and that you can use in your favor, then no amount of time it's going to stop me from trying to get that point across. For those of you who are starting out and want a little bit of guidance, these are the nuggets that I can give you. And that's what's important. And with that said, because I'm on this side and I can only show you what I'm doing and I cannot see what you do. I have opened a group with Facebook where you can post your paintings and share them with me and others that are already there. That way we can come closer. We can learn from one another. It's a safe space where we can share not only our successes, but also our failures, and a place where we can support one another. If you want to be part of that, I'm going to leave the link in the description below, and I will probably place it somewhere on the screen so you can see it. If you want to join me there and others, you are very welcome to do so. The Facebook page is going to be listed in the link below. And with that said, my friends, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. I will really appreciate it. It does tell the algorithm to show my content to other people like yourself. I will really appreciate it if you give it a thumbs up, if you leave me a comment, and let me know what you think about the video. And also, if this is your first time here and you haven't subscribed to the channel, maybe you can take a moment and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of my content or my future releases. So with that said, my friends, I hope you have enjoyed this experiment tutorial session with abstraction. And with that said, please take care of yourselves. Please stay safe. Be kind to one another. And I will see you on the next video. Until then, bye.